There I was, happy to be on my first set, completely manifested by my talent and determined positivity. Who cares that Adobe charged me $20 for the app, which I do not own? I will fight for my reimbursement later. I could care less that I have no money to eat or that my dog's separation anxiety got to a level of a husband demanding his wife stay at home and cook. I was where I wanted to be, where I was meant to be. That is why when the stylist whispered announced that I had too much hips for a pretty face, I ignored the former and took the latter. There is nothing a thin stylist hates more than a plus-size model actress. It feels like a breaking of some hidden agreement. They get me the finest wave-sized fashions that hit like Zendaya at a red carpet, and in exchange, I stop eating wafers. Period. Walking in, I could see she dreaded my size 12 ass. The other models were trying Moschino while she had gotten me the best of Old Navy. Yet for some reason, I was still too happy, too excited to take to heart how another female stylist used designed for women by men garments to absolutely conclude that my body was as feminine as a sack of logs tied to a truck. It always made me curious how so many stylists were female and so many men were designers in a sort of keeping of the guard dynamic. No one knew the actual reality of a woman's body and size like a woman, and yet no one can quite cut you down to size like a woman, or rather your own community. I swear, some of the worst bullying I have ever gotten was via family. Coughs, my abusive dad. Coughs. The stylist was proud that at 45 she had the waist and boobs of a 13-year-old boy who barely hit puberty. Meanwhile, I had the waist and boobs of a woman that probably had her period by age 7, which technically I got it at age 8. That's actually true. All of this is true. Growing up, I was always deemed a big girl, with my nickname por el caserío being gorda, which means fat in Spanish, while my cousin's name was gordo, which means fat in the masculine term in Spanish. For him, the name was ironic, a pun, considering he literally was the size of a wheat then. There was not one Puerto Rican home that was not offering him an abundance of food with the command, come, que estás flaco. Meanwhile, if I entered the room, I had to get full on water and dietary advice. The assumption was that I must have been eating everything in sight, including the table the plate was laid upon, of which their disgust was veiled by one of my favorite quotes from anyone with fat prejudice: I just want you to be healthy and happy. Ignoring their tactic was to consistently fat shame me into a misery that still kept me the same size. From absolute strangers to my own parents, my life had been defined by how people assumed I was pretty but damaged, i.e. pretty damaged. I could have been so much prettier had I not spent my entire life choosing flaming hot Cheetos over grilled vegetables. It was a core manipulation tactic of my father to turn my mother against me. He would take me to Cheesecake Factory, return me to tell her I had literally eaten the entire Cheesecake Factory. My mother glared at me, and I could see the wheels of her mind churning for another dietary restriction. Of course, when I called them out on it, they were insulted that I could not see. They were trying to save me and my beauty from the grips of excess fat and stress eating. The problem is I wasn't stress eating. They were stressed about my eating. There were times that the only times I had been thin were via absolute starvation, which of course launched their pride. Finally, I was beautiful and had an understanding of discipline. Good for me and my diminishing hungry ass. Yikes. I always loved dancing and working out. I have the energy of 15 people on a party bus celebrating the last night of singlehood of their bestie about to marry a D-bag, and knowing she will become unfun and dominated by the very man they red flagged by day one. They really try to give her all their energy in one final twerk show before they possibly see her again at her first child's christening or when her marriage begins its divorce proceedings. Thus, the world concluded that for some reason, despite doing 100-pound lifts, I was eating enough for a 200-pound gorilla, which meant not one of my plates went without a portion monitor. It sucked, and it made me hate the only body I would ever have, and have an absolutely horrible relationship with the very thing that sustains it: food. When the stylist did what most people do to style a plus-size gal, put her in oversized jeggings and a patterned shirt, I smiled because I was okay and no longer overthinking when the world concluded patterned shirts, long hair, and oversized sports pants were the perfect way to cover a body that was plus. I was where I wanted to be, in the body that got me there, and I felt really proud at my personal development. Old Deandra would have fantasized punching her in the face and called her mother, who would have concluded that somehow the stylist was right, and I had to understand a little something called sacrifice. Yet on that day, I still fantasized punching her and tossing her across the room like we were in a WWE match. But instead of doing it out of anger, I did it out of peace. A serenity you gain out of realizing that if a lifetime of exercise and crash dieting still earns you the same body, maybe it's time to just love it. Okay, so I went, my very first set, I was hired as a plus-sized actress because, that's inclusivity. They were looking for plus-size characters, and I was there, plus, and with my plussing, and she was trying to be subtle, but she kind of like whispered announced that I was very hippie, and she was getting very frustrated because I was a size 12, but I'm curvy. I got a thick booty and I love it. And she was frustrated that pants were hugging my curves. She wanted something loose, and she was very, very thin in her like mid 40s, not one curve on that body. I mean, I worry for her when she goes by the ocean because she would be confused for a surfboard and taken out to ride. And I was very proud that I wasn't hurt, and I was choosing not to be hurt, and I was choosing not to be embarrassed because feelings are choices. And part of growing up is seeing that and kind of choosing not to crumble when people make you crumble or want you to crumble. And that was a crumbling statement because she grabbed her hips and like said it in disgust, like she's just so hippie. And, people, I know I'm pretty. I feel I'm pretty, even if I've had a lifetime of people calling me ugly. I don't think I'm ugly, and I certainly don't think I should die because of it, but people treat you, especially as a woman, like your body should just be totally erased, and in turn your autonomy, your personality, because it's just not aesthetically pleasing. And it frustrates me because it's like, oh, you can't wear that dress. You don't have a pretty body. You can't wear that hair. You don't have a pretty look, which is why I was talking about, like, for some reason, stylists are convinced that if they get like the Old Navy section of flannel shirts and oversized jeggings and sportswear, that is aesthetically pleasing. And makes a plus size body look good. And really what it does, it makes me look like I just rolled out of bed. I look exhausted and uncombed. And it was, you have these women who are trying on really pretty dresses and pants, and it was a lack of effort on her part that I think she confused as a lack of effort on my part. Like I had spent a whole lifetime working really hard to be a size 12 in an earth that praises a size 0 in women. And no one had told me before her. And it's something that I consistently face because I think people confuse their prejudice for my happiness. Like, how could I be happy as a size 12 when I am not aesthetically pleasing to others? And I probably have faced, although they will act like I haven't, 20 million people before them saying I need to lose weight and I would be so much prettier. And I'm a very active person. Like I love doing exercise in part because it mentally clears me. Like you lift weights, you're not thinking, you're just trying not to crush your own foot. And it made me feel like as a child, I was consistently proving to people that I am a disciplined person, that I am an active person. And even though I don't have a body that looks disciplined or active or rather fit, all those kind of spiritual implications are not true. Because I think that's what I sometimes, pendulums swing back and forth. And I think in terms of body positivity, if you're fat, you're not ugly, but you might be unhealthy. And I think we do this weird thing where we can make unhealthy sound like we're calling someone ugly. And the problem is it's not necessarily untrue. I felt like my entire life, even when I was healthy, I was called unhealthy because I was big and I was curvy and I was fat. And a lot of times I look back on my childhood pictures and I'm like, I wasn't fat. I was thick, but I didn't have a stomach. I didn't have these abominable thighs that people treated like, people acted like I had cellulite by age 8. And it was that I was big. And there were moments in my childhood, or really when I got older, that I did get big and that I did get fat. And it's because you're told your whole life that you stress eat and that you overeat and you starve yourself to be thin and get praised. And that could only last so long. And I was crash dieting and then crashing from the diet. And then I would get big again, or rather fat. And the reason I'm saying a distinction is I was always curvy. I had boobs by age 5. I had a butt by age 6. I was tall. I was like 5'8" by age 7. I was big, and I was big for my age, but I was not fat. And I got fat because I felt like everybody was calling me fat when I was really big. And eventually it was like this manifest destiny. And my relationship with food became kind of like frenemy. I hated it. I would starve myself from it because I felt like, you eat a crouton, you gain 100 pounds. But the flip side of it, it was always there. And when people isolated me to just me and my plate, I filled it. Because it was like, well, you're the only one hanging out with me, food friend. And now I think my pride in this moment was I didn't choose anger. And you automatically fantasize like confronting that person. But in my fantasy, I was confronting her because I do love my body. I am growing more at peace with it. I am actually for the first time trying to make it healthier than ever. And I don't feel disgusted by it. Whereas before, old Deandra probably would have cried out of anger and fantasy confront this person because they were hurt. And now I'm like, I'm not hurt. I'm not hurt. I entered an existential crisis, and I wrote about this, of just kind of realizing that my whole life I've been on a diet. My whole life I've befriended and dated really bad people. My whole life I've been living under the veil and training of my father's abusiveness. And that really scared me because I thought to myself, and that's why I started Daddy Recovery, oh my God, like my whole life I could just always live less than. And never be happy with myself, never be at peace, never be present, always thinking of strategies, the future, the past. How do I get here? How do I get here? Like the most goal-oriented person to never achieve. And it scared me because you die. And I don't mean to be so grim, but we're not here forever. And time is just like water nowadays. It's going faster, I think. And I got really scared that my whole life I was the first person to say, I really want to be happy. And I got really scared at the idea that I wouldn't be. And I wouldn't be because I was thinking of how to please the world in body, heart, mind, and soul. And nobody was thinking of me, including me. So check out daddyrecovery.com for more content.